Howdy, Patriots. Segment 207 today. I'm titling this one Maduro is Deep State and Stolen Elections. Now, this video here by Laura Logan was sent to me for my viewing. It's 2 hours and 18 minutes long. I'm going to summarize it for you here. If you want to watch it in its entirety, you're more than welcome to. I think people should. This is quite the eye opener. I took I took a lot of notes, and to give it justice in passing this on to you, I'm going to be reading most of those notes. I thought that I spent a lot of time on my computer researching stuff, but I've been proven wrong. There is so much intel out there that people aren't aware of. It's mind blowing. The time and effort after watching this video, the time and effort that these three people put into researching and exposing the deep state and election fraud is wow. That's all I can say is wow. And I will remind you that they are more than qualified, and there are no conspiracy theories involved. It explains so much to the interwoven corruption in this country, the different facets of it, and why President Trump went after Maduro. So Gary Bernstein is a 4-year Air Force veteran and a 23-year veteran of the CIA's clandestine service, and he was also the commander of the CIA paramilitary team that took down Osama bin Laden. And Ralph Pizzullo he's the best-selling author, writer of at least, I believe he said 30 books so far, and I'll get more into his book that is relevant to this video. So let's begin. So a computer system was generated in Venezuela in the early 2000s, designed to help Chavez win his election. Fidel Castro, who had many interests in that region, told Chavez that he was going to lose his election unless he did something about it. So they came up with this idea of electronic voting. Chavez hired 3 software engineers to come up with software that he could use primarily to manipulate voting machines. And they first tried out their software on lottery machines in Italy. So they used that on the election in Venezuela. And as you know, Chavez won his election. Then they gave these engineers $200 million to perfect their system and apply it to elections in Latin America. In the early 2000s, many leftist leaders were elected using the system. Evo Morales of Bolivia, Daniel Ortega, probably familiar with him, in Nicaragua, Nestor Kirchner, Cristina Kirchner, Maximo Kirchner in Argentina throughout the years there, 50 years plus. So these 3 engineers then came to the U.S. I'm going to screw up their names here. Antonio Mugica. Oh, wow. I destroyed that one. Roger Pinata and Alfredo Anzola. They became U.S. citizens and founded Smartmatic. For you, those of you out there that have heard that name before, Smartmatic, they are a company that the State Department at the time was warned about these 3 and what they were up to, and the State Department did nothing. So they proceed with their company and start winning contracts all over the country to introduce Smartmatic voting systems. In 2007, they started a company called Sequoia, where they integrated the manipulation software into those machines. They first tried to get it, uh, convince people in Berkeley, California to get it going, and the Secretary of State at the time rejected it because they came out and said that this software is basically designed for manipulating elections. That's how easily it was. That's how open it was in what it was designed to do, and for them to catch it, that should tell you something. So in 2011, when infamous Jerry Brown was elected as governor, he then allowed it into California, the system into California. And to this day, from what I understand, to this day, Los Angeles County is still the only place that runs Smartmatic elections. And people are wondering why Newsom and many other legislators are still in. As far I've always said, California is a red state. It's that their elections are being stolen, and it's a communist operation, and so this just proves it. And so they expanded their software to now include with a Canadian company for the machines that are called Dominion. You probably heard that name before, and they are primarily used in swing states because the swing states can change the outcome of an election, and so they use them primarily in swing states, in key elections, to do their manipulation for however they want it to go. So the first election that they used the software was in Cook County, Illinois. The primary was between Hillary Clinton and Obama. Roger Piñate went to Cook County. He helped run that election, and Obama, of course, won it illegally. And come to find out that the reason they helped him was Obama was a huge Cuba fan, and he was supporting the Castro Revolution. Now, Smartmatic is based out of Caracas, Venezuela today. They have around 150 engineers working for this, and their primary purposes are to manipulate elections and defeat or circumvent audits. They've become masters at now hiding how this system manipulates the elections. See, as I understand it, each machine takes a picture of the ballots, and since the machines are hooked to the internet, they can go in and remove real ballot pictures and replace them with fake or fraudulent ones. They then make sure no one has access to the source codes to verify accuracy of the machines. They prepare a year in advance of how they're going to manipulate the elections that they are targeting. It's a multi-billion-dollar business globally with a lot of bells and whistles and people to make this happen. The Philippines, after one of their elections, questioned a member of Smartmatic, a man by the name of Garcia, and they knew that he manipulated their election. So much so that they banished him from the Philippines, and guess where Garcia comes? He ends up in Fort Worth, Texas, and is hired as an election commissioner. I mean, folks, you can't make this shit up. He then moved to Dallas and started another company like Smartmatic. He oversaw one county election in Texas that had been held by the GOP for 67 years. And in that one election, he turned the county blue. And so Laura Logan asked Gary if the crooks are getting help from the U.S. And he, without hesitation, said, yes, they are. So the Venezuelan army is the logistical support for the cartel down there. Maduro was the cartel leader, And that's probably why President Trump shelled their facilities there, to take out the cartel and whatever operations they had for election manipulation. In 2020, Mr. Bernstein started investigating the Venezuelan election. This is when he started digging into the operations of Smartmatic and contacted General Flynn to assist, and Patrick Byrne, who was the former chairman and CEO of Overstock.com, who largely funded Mr. Bernstein's investigation. Cost a lot of money to do the investigation, and Mr. Byrne was vital in helping him do that. They built computer labs outside the country to figure out how these elections were manipulated. Part of their team were past Smartmatic employees, and so they picked their brains to find out how they manipulated the elections, and they divulged the information. They did go to an FBI officer to report what was going on immediately, and the officer told Mr. Bernstein to basically flee the city, because if the FBI gets a hold of this information, they will try to destroy it and do whatever they can to convict him. The FBI officer also told him to go to Congress and the media. That was his suggestion. Mr. Bernstein did go to some well-known names in the media, but they didn't want to get involved. They also then brought it to Congress, and Congress, whoever they brought it to in Congress, were literally afraid to get involved, except for one senator, Marwin Mullen from Oklahoma. I believe he's a veteran. He was someone that took a team into, was a veteran. I got to read my notes here. He was someone that took a team into Afghanistan to rescue Americans when Biden pulled the military out, and our 13 service members were killed. Anyway, 9 months before the election, Bernstein went to one U.S. attorney that would help him, and made their presentations to the U.S. attorney. The attorneys told them to sit tight, and they would report it to the Office of Public Integrity. Never heard of that one. And that probably in about 3 to 4 weeks, the FBI would contact them to work on this. After about 1 to 2 months, he still wasn't contacted by the FBI. And in retrospect, what actually happened is the FBI went after him instead, after Mr. Bernstein instead, harassing, surveilling, and many other things. So he packed up his family, and they moved to Switzerland for a year so that he could continue their investigations without the FBI breathing down their necks. Basically, everyone that they turned to get this information out there would not help. He called them cowards. So now in comes Ralph. Ralph and Gary met, and Ralph had written another book with Gary about an operation that Gary did in Afghanistan. And so Ralph wrote this book called Stolen Elections. He had to write it in about 5 weeks because the 2024 election was coming up, and they wanted to get that out there before the election. They wanted the information about the manipulation of elections. They wanted that information to get out there. And the book was supposed to be released on October 12th. And a week before the release, the publisher came out, lawyers, with advice from their lawyers not to release the book. In fact, it was about a year later before its release, but then, of course, the election was over. So, so somebody got to the lawyers, and somebody got to the publisher, and it it appears that the majority of lawyers over the years from 2020 on, this is my thoughts now. It appears that many lawyers, the majority of lawyers out there in this country, have done everything they possibly can to do anything to help election integrity in this country. They've gone out of their way to stop any evidence that could not only arrest people, but to turn this around. Let's see, and then back to Gary. So as the manipulation program was getting more popular, so this is when China, Russia, and Iran started getting involved financially. The software for manipulating elections is now in 72 countries around the world. They went to the Trump campaign about a month before the 2024 election to inform them of what was happening or what could happen. And the campaign team told them not to bring it up. They didn't want this to get out to the public because they thought, in other words, they thought that people would think if the machines were manipulated, it would suppress the vote, and people would be like, well, it doesn't matter if we go out and vote. If they're just going to manipulate the vote counts, then it doesn't pay for us to go out there. So they were trying to talk Gary out of presenting this, but he didn't listen to the Trump campaign advisors and put out a warning video on the airwaves anyway. And I'll admit I have not seen that video. It was brought out that the Venezuela cartel was colluding with the Biden administration. Shocker there, right? Now, Ralph said that the reason the courts didn't take any cases about the 2020 election is that he felt that not enough criminal investigation evidence was available. I'm not sure what evidence. I don't necessarily agree with that. He may be referring to what Sidney Powell and Rudy Giuliani were bringing in. I thought they had plenty of manipulation evidence, but then again, it is true. They really, I don't believe they imposed their evidence as criminal activity per se. So, I mean, there may be some justification, some truth into what Ralph is saying there. Mr. Bernstein goes on to say that there are intelligence agency and diplomatic people in this country that are being paid off by the Cuban regime. He claims that the Venezuela and Cuban intelligence got so much info, intelligence agencies from those countries got so much info from our country over the last 20 years that they basically had diplomatic and intelligence dominance over this country. He didn't name these people, but said that the Trump administration now knows who they are. He goes on to say that the CIA and FBI have failed this country miserably. He also believes that the CIA director, John Ratcliffe, is doing a terrible job and doesn't believe that he's even running the CIA. Laura spoke up and said that he's basically corrupt. He believes that the CIA, Gary does, believes that the CIA should be shut down entirely and that an OSS organization be created that only does CI, counterintelligence, and that's all. Forget about starting wars, regime changes, and things like that. Just counterintelligence. He also stated that when he takes information or has taken information to the Trump administration, that the info is getting blocked. The only way they can get it to the president has been if they directly take it to him. They took the information to the DNI, and the DNI wouldn't give it to the president. But since then, Tulsi Gabbard has fired 40% of the agency employees, and things are starting to now happen. Things are starting to finally get to the president the way it should be. DC, right? He goes on to say then that Maduro sent 5,300 intelligence trained thugs. I mean, the worst of the worst criminals in that country, and he sent them into this. We've heard about Venezuela gangs and shit coming over here, but Maduro had a lot to do with that. And these thugs that he had come over here, they were literally killing people in Venezuela for their government, for the government. Gary reported this activity to the Biden regime, and of course they wouldn't do anything about it because that was all part of the Biden plan. So on January 7th, 2025, HHS then called him, asked for sources on his report, and HHS reported it to the Trump administration. He did point out that he is a big fan of Tom Homan and Kristi Noem, and says that they are fighters for this country. Brought out that Doge found a program called CEPS, CEPPS, a company backed by NGOs, imagine that, and George Soros, imagine that, which was a marketing arm for the illegal software, basically. They were getting our embassies overseas to promote this illegal software, these illegal software programs, to the tune of 6.9 billion taxpayer dollars spent over a decade. He also mentioned that 2 Black Lives Matter leaders visited Hugo Chavez at the time he was in, and they were given $20 million. I guess actor Danny Glover escorted the BLM members down there to get the money. And while Venezuelans are basically dirt poor, Laura Logan pointed out some things. They're going to dumpsters and trying to find rats to eat. It's gotten that bad. The Cartel del Sol has approximately $2.7 trillion in their banks around the world. This is a huge, huge operation. So Jorge Rodriguez, current president of the National Assembly of Venezuela, and his sister Delcy Rodriguez, the current vice president of Venezuela, who, by the way, has been on the airwaves now wanting to take over. They had a father, this was brought out, they had a father who was a guerrilla fighter in the 1960s and 70s who captured an American by the name of Milhouse, who was killed by the Venezuelan security forces. Their mother left Venezuela and married Carlos the Jackal, who is a Venezuelan assassin and terrorist. She since then has left him, but it speaks for the lineage of the current regime in Venezuela, Jorge and his sister Delcy. They're both Cuban. It was brought out that they are both Cuban operatives. Listening to this is my thoughts. Listening to this video, I was not aware, or would have never thought to be aware of how much Cuba was involved in all of this. That was a big surprise to me. So anyway, Jorge and Delcy are both Cuban operatives. Them and Maduro were all trained by Cuba at around age 14. Venezuela needs to keep these people out of power, or otherwise they're going to go down the same road. Let's see, who else is on the cartel payroll? Well, past president of Mexico, Andre Obrador, got $200 million from the cartel for his campaign. There's an oil company in Venezuela. In fact, it's the only oil company there, Chevron. And basically the cartel runs Chevron down there. So whenever you go out to fill your vehicle, and if you stop by a Chevron gas station, remember that before you fill your vehicles, that Chevron is basically manipulated by the cartel. Um, After the 2020 election, the Trump administration knew shit was happening, and so they hired a Berkeley research group to find out exactly what happened. And it just so happens that the Berkeley group is run by an American Cuban spy. Of course, the report came back to the Trump administration that everything was fine. Nothing wrong. The election was legit. Um, to the credit of the Trump administration at that time, they had no idea about this group's corruption and connections, and so it is what it is. One of Mr. Bernstein's sources was a U.S. congressman who was very versed in election theft. He'd been familiar with it about what's been going on over the last decade or so, and he happened to go to another congressman's home, and told him what he knew about election fraud in the country and theft in the country. And the congressman yelled back at him saying, that's Cuban information. How dare you steal that information from them? Congressman obviously knew he wasn't going to get any help, so he left the home. And by the time he got back home, leading members of the cartel had called his home and threatened to kill his parents if they ever hear any more about him discussing this information. The tentacles are widespread. Mr. Bernstein believes that pretty much everyone in Congress is affected by this. He believes that President Trump has been picking up his phone and calling leaders around the world to receive his intel into what is happening, because he believes he can't rely on the CIA for intel briefings. Excuse me. He tells President Trump to not listen to his advisors and make his decisions on gut instinct. That's pretty telling. That's pretty telling. The Chinese came in with money for these programs as they basically don't want to confront their enemies head on, and they have no reason to, because all they have to do is undermine and take down the enemy within the country. You know, send in 600,000 students on student visas to collect intel, buy up land next to military bases, start their own companies within this country. Yeah, why do they need to actually physically go to war with somebody when they can undermine their enemies from within? The Chinese manufacture the voting machines that we use in this country after they're loaded with the Venezuelan manipulating software. All the machines are connected to servers in Serbia, and that's how the number manipulation is happening. John Paulos, owner and CEO of Dominion Voting, went to college with a Serb, and who together they opened an office in Belgrade that had 99 Serbian, Venezuelan, and Chinese system administrators, and they were connected to the swing states using Huawei servers. I've briefly heard that name, Huawei, using Huawei servers from China, reporting election data back to Hong Kong. Let me go off subject for a bit. Do not believe, because it's happening in the state I'm in, do not believe your Secretary of State or your auditors one bit when they tell you that the machines are not connected to the internet. They like to use that excuse in furthering their election manipulation, whether they're fully in on it or not. But that's their excuse for keeping the machines. They don't. they don't want to acknowledge the fact that the machines are on the internet. Okay, so the Democrats are bound and determined to change this country, and they've teamed up. They've teamed up with our enemies to try to make that happen. What happened? What happened the night of the 2020 election? Gary says that the Iranian foreign minister was in Caracas with Maduro, and they were sitting. He doesn't say they were eating popcorn, but they were sitting there and literally watching them steal the election from President Trump and gloating about it as it was happening. The evidence is all out there now on the cheating that took place during the 2020 election. The intel agencies and President Trump's advisors and staff blocked this information from getting to him for 8 months this term. For 8 months, they've been trying to get information to President Trump, and people were blocking it. But now he has it. Now President Trump has it, and that's probably why Maduro is where he is now. Kash Patel and many others in the agencies are trying to figure out who the criminals are and that are still left in their agencies. And this is why I have said before that Kash Patel said that he was going to clean house once he got into the FBI, and that's what he should have done the first week he was in there. And Laura Logan agrees, and it never got done. And so while not all FBI agents are bad, he has a huge number of them that are helping the enemy. The criminals trying to take down the criminals that are in the FBI that are complicit in trying to take down the country. So Ralph said that if we were to save the republic, it's up to the American people to voice their opinions and put pressure on the White House to get things done. And he said we need to get rid of the machines. Point blank, we need to get rid of the machines and go back to paper ballots. He cited the country of India, with the billions of people that they have in India. They use paper ballots. They hand count. Why can't this country? We can. We can. And that's another thing your auditors and your Secretary of State will tell you. Oh my God, it takes too much time to hand count and it costs too much money. Well, that's false information. That's just another excuse. Gary goes on and says that this investigation that they started, and he does mention some other people that teamed up with him, that it started out as a money laundering operation or investigation by the cartel, and somehow the election cheating popped up, and so they ran with that as well. They in the conversation talking about what happened in Benghazi, basically our government buying weapons from Al Qaeda to give to Syria. You know the story and what happened there. They're briefly briefly touched on the events that took place where Mandami, the jihadist, was elected as mayor. Ralph said that obviously New Yorkers forgot about the Twin Towers already going down, and he thought it was rather sad that this mayor was elected. Also, he mentioned that the fact that 38% of the Jewish population voted for him is ridiculous. They complain about anti-Semitism and people picking on them, and then they turn around and vote and give power to a jihadist that could give a shit less about them. Makes no sense. Makes no sense whatsoever. Their final thought as far as what President Trump needs to do, Gary looked at the camera and said, "End the power in Venezuela and get rid of the CIA. Stop the enemies messing with our elections. And the big thing is to hold people accountable. Start making arrests." And so that's my notes on the 2 hours and 18 minutes. Obviously, there's a lot more in between, but these are the highlights that I pointed out in this video. My closing thoughts are this: the Dems are starting, I mean, with Maduro's arrest now, the Dems are starting to expose themselves in the defense of Maduro. They're starting to come out now, and the Cuban dictator now is pissed because his cash cow is being taken down. He's out there threatening the U.S. with bloodshed. I mean, that asshole can go ahead and send his little military, confiscate the illegal alien boats from Cuba, and fill them with your military and head for Key West. You know, I mean, our military needs more practice in shooting boats out of the water. Sure, send your military over. FAFO. And then with Cuba having a hissy fit now, I mean, China is already involved with Cuba, but I have a feeling that they're going to get even more active now. Money talks, and when you take people's cash cows away, they get a little pissed off. So now that it's reported, I saw this yesterday, now it's reported that a 92-year-old Clinton judge who blocked Venezuelan gang deportations has been assigned to the Maduro case. You know, why? I mean, there's protocol. I don't know why they kept this this case in New York or DC is beyond me. They knew this shit was going to happen. They had to have known this shit was going to happen. I mean, the U.S. government is deeply owned by the Cuban intelligence agency. Cuba had Maduro elected, and now they get a 92-year. I wonder if they took him out of a nursing home to assign him to this case. Because obviously the DNC is short on activist judges, apparently. But, you know, he blocked Venezuelan gang deportations. So that's basically up to this administration and Maduro case, right? I believe it is what it is now, but I believe that Maduro needs to be handed over to our military, not only for his safety, but we need to interrogate his ass big time, and the best place to do that would be at Gitmo. He needs to be treated after everything that he's done, shipping, funneling the drugs into this country, sending his 5,300 criminals into this country to invade the country. As far as I'm now concerned, he should be treated as a combatant. Like I said, he defied our sovereignty by invasion, and keep the FBI and CIA away from him, for at least a mile away. Do not let these agencies get a hold of him. I also believe that it's now is the time to seize all of Soros' assets and his sons, and either indict him or have him extradited. He's part of the problem. He's a big part of the problem, and another deep stater in this country. I also believe now that, I mean, I had my thoughts, I had my doubts, but after hearing this video, there's no way in hell, excuse me, that Bondi's going to arrest any deep state members, because I would imagine that they've gotten to her and she's being intimidated at the very least. Um, Probably fears for her life. I don't know for sure. Excuse me, but um, President Trump needs to have her step down or fire her and get someone in there that can't be threatened or intimidated. Because it's the arrests need to happen. There is no doubt uh, they need to happen. This could also probably explain why the Supreme Court or any judge wouldn't take any election fraud cases, other than what was mentioned in what Ralph mentioned about not having the appropriate um, evidence. But I mean, with the tentacles of the cartel, who's to say that our Supreme Court justices or any judge, for that matter, wouldn't take on these cases because it's the cartel is involved? I mean, do they are they reaching out to the does the tentacles reach out to the secretaries of state in this country, or even further down the food chain? Maybe to the auditors in some of our swing states. The investigation hasn't gone that far from Gary, but one one has to wonder. Um, with this 90 with this 92-year-old judge that's now assigned, time will tell what's going to happen. Um, One thing is for sure, this Maduro is definitely, you talk about Brennan and Clapper and all those crooks down. I've always said that that's low hanging fruit. They're just puppets of the deep state. Maduro, Soros, even Soros is down the food chain compared to Maduro and some of these other people. Maduro's the ultimate deep state fish, and I mean he's arrested. Operations are being stopped, but he needs to go down. If not, I mean, if this 92-year-old judge allows him to walk, I can't see it. I want to say I can't see it happening. But if he allows this Maduro to walk, I believe there's going to be hell to pay in this country. That would be the ultimate shitting in the face of the Americans in this country, as far as law is concerned. Now, I know why President Trump went after Venezuela. I thought it was for the drugs, and I believe it's primarily for the drugs, but I don't think it was just for the drugs. I believe that Gary is correct in saying that they finally got information to the president that they needed to, and he looked at this information and he said, "Oh hell no, we're taking them down." This election manipulation and intelligence gathering that's been going on in this country and turning it over to Venezuela, China, Russia, and Iran, and whoever else, Cuba, and along with everyone that's being bribed in this country over the years, this has got to stop. This Maduro is big fish, people. He's at the very top, and as far as I'm concerned, this was an America first move, taking Maduro down. I also understand, after seeing a report this morning, that President Trump is starting to put the squeeze on Colombia. Of course, there's going to be those people out there on the right and the left, but also on the right, that they're going to be complaining about him not doing enough in this country, and that he needs to keep his nose out of other people's business in other countries. As I usually say and tell them, he can do multiple things at one time, and after everything that I just went through, read to you, I think it's high time that we put an end to this. This is devastating information um, for our government to be manipulated and made fearful of the cartel, to go so far as to assist them in rigging elections to get people in. I mean, they got Castro in, or Chavez, excuse me. They got Chavez installed with their election manipulation, and they got Biden installed with their election manipulation. This isn't going to end. They're going to keep doing this until they feel that the country is within their grasp to take it over completely. And so this is what President Trump is up against. Whether he's got people below him that are trying to impede his progress, this is what he's up against. And as Gary said, it is up to we the people to make sure that this is not forgotten. This was a huge shocker to me, people. Huge shocker. Pass it on. We got a lot to do in this country. They're concerned, deeply concerned with the 2026 elections coming up, that we can hurry up and put an end to this before that election, because if we don't, there's 47 GOP seats up for grab with only 6, and the DNC only needs 6 of those to take over. Something's gotta happen before the elections in November. That's all I got, people. Until next time. Again, if you see somebody doing this, it is the international sign of distress. They are in deep trouble, and they are asking for you to help them. If you can safely help them, do it immediately. That's all I got, people. Stay frosty. 2026. Ooh, grab the popcorn.